Hi again. Let's now have a look at the Enlightenment values, one side of that Janus-headed duality that the modern world is largely based upon. Firstly, we need to think to ourselves a little bit about the world of the 17th century and the 18th century, in which, following the scientific revolution, intellectuals gather, particularly in salons of Paris, but also in places like Switzerland, the United States and Britain, to discuss new ideas, new ways of seeing the world. Scientific revolution set up whole new ways of making sense of things. These new ways of making sense of things are embraced by a group of people called philosophers. And here's some examples of those philosophers who come together in salons and speak, who write letters to each other, who publish and engage in public argument about what the world could be. Sir Isaac Newton was the great Enlightenment thinker of the scientific age. He was a scientific revolutionary. People like Francis Bacon are also writing with him. And people like the Marquis de Concordance are also publishing at this time. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Adam Smith are all writing sources such as these. Diderot's Encyclopedia, The Social Contract by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, and two treatises on government by John Locke. These are some of the great writings of the Age of Enlightenment. So what's that Age of Enlightenment? Well, it follows the scientific revolution, and it's well worth reading up a little bit in your study on this topic. It's dominated by the writing of philosophers, not philosophers, philosophers. And the philosophers are writing from probably the late 1600s, there's some of the earliest dates are around the 1680s, around 1700 until 1815, when we enter a new age. They emphasize the rational, the use of scientific principles to question tradition and religion and superstition. If you can't prove it, then it shouldn't be going on. If you can't use logic to justify it, then it shouldn't be going on. They apply scientific method, observation, logic, experiment to the world of society, to the structures of government, and they start to create some of the beautiful documents that underpin two revolutions in the ways countries are run. Firstly, in the United States, as the United States is created, it rejects British colonialism and creates a new form of government, the first of the world's modern republics, and in France in 1789 in the French Revolution. They are remaking the world. There's a beautiful line from the American Revolution talking about turning the world upside down. They're reshaping the world. The idea is that they have new understandings about the way society can be and should be based upon scientific principles, that civilization is progressing through their writings. Now, there are two beautiful documents that capture their writing so well, and these are the US Declaration of Independence and the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. This guy, Thomas Jefferson, is at the heart of creating both of them, and we've looked at this document before. The idea that rights are inalienable, that governments can be chosen of the people, by the people, for the people. The concept of popular sovereignty, that governments are constituted of people, by the people, they're chosen by the people, and they're chosen from the people. It's not an absolute monarchy that runs a society, that the divine right of kings has no place in their world, that it's the people who are sovereign, the population, popular sovereignty. These are the Enlightenment values that are coming through in the 1700s that are shaping the world that follows. But we have that Janus double head. How will they interface with the world outside Europe? So when Thomas Jefferson, Rousseau, others, Lafayette, Abbé, when they're writing, they're developing a way of structuring society based upon new principles, popular sovereignty, liberty and equality. They're creating a new order, a new way of being. They're rejecting the old practices of government and stating a new way the world could be. So when those ideas aren't applied in Europe's empires, outside the European home, outside the mother countries of those empires, When they're not applying it, are they being hypocritical or is something else going on? And that's something at the heart of this unit. Let's look at that other beautiful document now just briefly. 3 philosopher writers in 1789 during the French Revolution write this document. This is the 17 articles of the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen. You can see a beautiful imagery here of it printed out in the 1700s in France, and you can see the writers there. One was a priest, an abbé, Emmanuel says. Lafayette was a count, an aristocrat, and Thomas Jefferson, an American, the 3 writers of the famous French Declaration of Rights of Man. Look at the highlighted parts here and perhaps hit pause every now and then. I know you can read and I don't want you to just read with me. But there's this idea of liberty and equality all the way through. Ownership of property, safety, the ability to resist against oppression, the idea that people choose their governments. How does this fit nicely with imperialism, particularly British imperialism and people like Cecil Rhodes in Africa? What liberty means is defined. The importance of the rule of law, which comes up in the treaties on government. The way laws are created, that it's the people who choose the rules. What if you're an African when the British move in the 19th century? Are you choosing the rules here? All citizens being equal. Does that really apply to race? Religious differences. What about when missionaries and Europeans go into Africa and force the Christian religion on others? Freedom of thought and opinion, being able to write and speak freely. What if that comes into opposition of those values that we hold from the Enlightenment? The rights of man and citizen do require support by police, by the military, and so on. But force can't be used against the citizens. Let's think about what might happen in the colonies as a being taken. The idea that property can't be taken off people by the government. How does that fit with the colonial experience of indigenous populations around the world? What's going on with this Janus duality, this paradox? So what I want to leave you with at this point is the idea that even as the revolutionaries are trying to popularize their values, we have this paradox where human freedom and individual rights are being promoted hand in hand with a process by which others are put into bondage and slavery. Native populations are being slaughtered. Colonials are being dominated. Colonies are being dominated. Their lands being taken. At exactly the time that the French are promoting racial equality, we have some of the most appalling experiences of racial inequality going on. So what is happening when this Janus head is existing? What is happening in Britain? Are they being hypocritical? Or is another process taking place? And that's the concept of this unfulfilled promise of the Enlightenment, the challenges that our societies face, and the journey of progress and civilization. Is civilization a very subjective term?